The commander of Russian forces in Ukraine said on Wednesday that his troops will withdraw from the crucial port city of Kherson in the south, a major setback reflecting Kremlin's increasing struggles to turn back a counter-offensive that has returned hundreds of square miles of seized land to Ukrainian control. The announcement was met with skepticism by Ukrainian officials who have been wary their troops may be lured into a trap by Russian forces girding for an urban warfare in the industrial city of the west bank of the Dnipro River. Now, General Sergei, speaking on the Russian state TV, said retreat from the only regional capital seized since the war began in February was quote-unquote a hard decision. But he told Russian Defense Minister that the move would spare the lives of troops for allowing of an establishment of a better defensive position. Ukrainian attacks have cut off supply lines, and they say that crossing points have been cut off as well, leaving Russian troops vulnerable to encirclement. What really is the truth, and what does this mean for the Russia-Ukraine war going ahead? We'll open this up for a discussion, starting with Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar, former diplomat, joining us. Also joining us is Ambassador Manju Seth, former diplomat. Ingrida Kim is a journalist from Russia. She'll be joining us shortly. Dmytro Karpenko, a Ukrainian IT specialist, with us. Gautam Mukherjee, senior journalist. Madhav Nalapad, editorial director of the Sunday Guardian, with us. I welcome all of you on this very special panel. I'll start with our guest from Ukraine first, Dmytro. Dmytro, how do you personally and how do Ukrainians really view this withdrawal of the Russian forces from Kherson? Because it seems as of now, the Ukrainians are not rejoicing, you're not overjoyed. You're looking at this move with a lot of skepticism. What really is the fear in your mind?
Okay, as by tradition, when Russians say something, it doesn't mean that. We have to, firstly see the information from the intel and stuff like that. So, and it's the first part. And the second part is it's a really high chance that after retreating to the left bank of the Dnipro River, Russians will just start to strike the Kherson city with the artillery and the shells and just try to destroy it like they did with the Mariupol. That's why it's not such a great news. But yeah, that's how mostly the people feel, I'd say.
All right, so you say that the Russians cannot be taken at face value. There's always a fear that they could be, of course, trying to lure Ukrainian forces closer to Kherson for a surreptitious attack. We'll have to wait and watch what the Russian strategy is. But Ambassador Sajjanhar, at the onset of the war, many experts had almost predicted a very swift win for Russia. That doesn't seem to be the situation. The ground reality, very, very different. How do you interpret this latest developments? Russian forces withdrawing from Kherson, a major setback for Russia and for Putin?
Well, the first point that you made that, the Russians were expecting an easy win as far as Ukraine is concerned. Of course, that was an assessment that has gone wrong very seriously. And that has been clear after the first few weeks of the conflict. Because, when we saw all these 64-kilometer long convoy outside Kiev, and it was thought that Kiev is going to fall today, tomorrow, day after, but that today, tomorrow, day after, that never came. So I think there have been a large number of miscalculations and wrong assessments that have been made by Russia. And over the last several weeks, we have seen that Ukrainian forces have also been registering a large number of victories, whether it is Kharkiv or it is Kharkiv in the north, or it is in the southeast. And the latest is Kherson, of course. If this is factually accurate, that the Russians are withdrawing from the west bank of the Dnipro River and from the town of Kherson, that would, of course, be taken as a huge tactical military setback as far as Russia is concerned. And this would be in tune with what has happened as far as the Crimea bridge, the Kerch bridge is concerned, the damage that was inflicted on it some weeks ago. Also in terms of what has been done on as far as the Moskva ship in Black Sea is concerned, which was the biggest in the Russian fleet there. So I think this would be one of the very big both on the ground and psychological victories for Ukraine. if that were to be proved correct. But as our friend as a
Yes.
the representative from Ukraine said, that it cannot be taken at face value. The last point that I would like to make here is that, whatever might be the case, meaning this would be several hundred kilometers, maybe a few thousand kilometers overall that Ukraine has been able to take back from Russia. But Russia has established control over about 100,000 square kilometers. So this is still a chunk in the overall occupation that Russia has done. And so it is not in any significant manner, in my view, going to change the direction of the conflict. This is a tactical victory which might be happening here and there. Of course, it's a huge loss of face as far as Russia is concerned. But I think in the overall conduct of the war and the progress of the war, I think it will not have any significant impact on that.
Okay. Ambassador Manju Seth, would you concur with what Ambassador Sajjanhar had to say? Because many, calling it a big victory for Ukraine, a shot in their arm. End of the day, Kherson was one city which Russia had captured right at the onset. It was a lone capital region which they had managed to capture. And the fact that now Russia has itself announced that their troops will be withdrawing from the same region, do you think it's going to be a major setback for Russia? It's going to have a bigger implication or repercussion over the Russia-Ukraine war? Or is it just, a small incident which is not going to have a bigger or a wider ramification, ma'am? Your interpretation, your analysis of the situation.
Yeah, I think it is not going to be a big game changer. And as Ambassador Sajjanhar has said, it will be, and the territory that they are vacating is on one side of the Dnipro River. It's not something that they are, vacating the entire Kherson region, and it's only a partial withdrawal. And as per various reports, is because of their supply chain and the supply lines being affected. That is why they have withdrawn across the river, and they will still hold on to the major portion of Kherson. Yes, it is a small loss of face, but I'm not sure it will change the course of the war, the never-ending war. It looks like when they still, Russia felt it would be over. Ukraine thought would, they would be able to repel them and get over with it. But I think both sides have made sort of inaccurate assessments, so to speak, and it is still carrying on with devastating effect on the population, on the civilian population, on the people of the world. And you can see that the energy crisis and the food crisis that is facing the world, I think, has all been these consequences of this long drawn-out war. And this particular withdrawal, while being maybe our friend from Ukraine has said, it may not be actual withdrawal. It may be just be a tactical retreat for the time being. That is also possible because earlier when they occupied Kherson, they had said that this is part of Russia, and in the recent, post-referendum post-referendum, they said this is part of Russia, very much and forever part of Russia. So it may not be, a complete withdrawal, but only for the time being to regroup and sort of assess the situation, I think, and then maybe we don't know how things are going to pan out, and they might just again occupy it again, depending on the situation.
Well, absolutely. And, Professor Nalapad, if you could come in here, as I was saying, many had expected a swift victory for Russia at the onset of the war. What would you say? Has there been a miscalculation from the side of Russia? And also an admission really that Russia is losing the ground there in Ukraine, the fact that they had to withdraw from Kherson. Of course, the reason given at the moment is that they don't want a further loss of life, etc. But obviously, this sort of humanitarian reason cannot be suddenly the cause of their withdrawal from, an area which was their prized possession.
Well, I'd like to say that there's an old saying, beware of Greeks bearing gifts. And our Ukrainian friend is perfectly justified in being a little careful of any sort of Russian, quote-unquote, surrender, defeat, withdrawal. And we are seeing it on CNN, BBC. I mean, these channels are desperately trying to create, if I may say so, an atmosphere in the West to continue with this war, when the reality is more and more people in the West, including the ruling parties there, are questioning it. Poor Biden has been the latest victim of this. I think, the economic chaos caused by his moves on Ukraine have led significantly to, to his lack of popularity. So I only would like to say, so far as Kherson is concerned, this has been announced by the chief of military operations in Ukraine, the Russian general, and by the Russian Defense Minister. I watched it on RT. In the interest of freedom of speech, the European Union, United States, they have banned RT. Freedom of speech is definitely promoted by bans, according to this great philosophy of the European Union. But the reality is, you don't announce this kind of a withdrawal unless there are sound strategic reasons for it. And I see 2 or 3 reasons. Maybe I'm wrong, but all of us have had extensive experience with Russia, and I must say that all of us feel terribly sorry for what's happening in Ukraine to the Ukrainian people. They're going through absolute hell, and it's really tragic. But I'd like to say one, for example, there is some risk of Ukrainian, American-supplied munitions basically, completely destroying a dam on the Dnipro River. And if that dam is destroyed, you can have tens of thousands of casualties in the flooding that will take place. I think the Russians are a bit worried that the Ukrainians are getting desperate enough, and that they are, in a sense, they are so confident that the West will accept whatever Ukrainian narrative there is, that they will destroy the dam and then say Russia destroyed it to kill its own people, to get people angry at Ukraine. I don't know. But the fact is, Kherson is very important from the point of view of hanging on to Crimea. It's very important as the mouth of the Dnipro River. I don't see any withdrawal really taking place. As Ambassador Manju Seth says, the Russians basically are waiting with their aircraft, with their missiles, with their drones, in case Ukrainian troops move in. But I think Ukrainian troops have really understood this, and they are more careful. I again repeat, it's really tragic what we are seeing in Ukraine, the complete destruction of a country. And it's extremely unfortunate. But so far as Kherson is concerned, it's strategically too important to abandon. This is a tactical withdrawal to protect Russian lives. And that means that some kind of an operation is likely there, which the Russians believe should not involve Russian lives and pro-Russian elements in Kherson, which is why they're evacuating it. I'm expecting a lot of activity there, and this is going to be the start of that. So again, I repeat, our Ukrainian friend is absolutely right to be cautious about it.
So, Gautam Mukherjee, if you could jump in here, should we take this announcement by Russia with a pinch of salt, as is being suggested by the other panelists? Do you think it at all makes tactical sense for Russia to withdraw from the Kherson region?
Well, from the Kherson region, certainly not. But when you make a unilateral announcement like this from the defense minister and the person who's actually conducting the Russian troops in Ukraine, then it is most likely a tactical action, and the objective is that if the Ukrainians move in, they will be massacred from across the river, and if they don't, there may be plans to destroy key facilities in Kherson that will further cripple its ability to survive while the war drags on. So either way, it's not exactly good news for Ukraine. The Russians are not going to let go of Kherson. They can't afford to. It is very strategically placed, and therefore they are only doing this partially because they don't want to be encircled, because their supply lines are stretched, the bridges have been destroyed, and so they've been evacuating most of civilians, some of them forcibly. So they are making ready to either demolish large parts of Kherson or demolish the Ukrainian army and forces as they come in. The Ukrainians are using intelligence, and they're not going to be sitting ducks. they're going to look at the other side of the river just as much as the Russians are looking at the part that the western part that they are evacuating and so-called surrendering. So this will go on, and it's sad but true that Russia is not going to give up the southern part of Ukraine, and this will be a war of attrition that is likely to stretch. 80,000 fresh Russian troops have been plunged into the Ukraine as well. So all of this indicates that they're going nowhere. They're willing to take the attrition, and they're going to kick back again.
And this doesn't seem to be the end of the war. It doesn't seem, of course, the fact that even though, if at all, this statement is correct, they're actually withdrawing from Kherson, that's their ultimate plan. Even then, the Russian forces do not plan to move from there. And Dnipro, is that the bigger fear? Is that why Ukraine is so skeptical of the statement which has come from the side of Russia? And what do you think this latest development mean for the Russia-Ukraine war?
Who's that for?
Dnipro, are you still with us?
Oh, yeah, I'm still with you. Yeah, I just didn't get who is going to answer this question.
Okay,
all right, yeah. Sorry. So what will it lead to? Well, first of all, we have to understand that no one actually dismisses its land by the free will, It's the work of the Ukrainian forces that made Russians to withdraw their forces. It doesn't work the other way. So this has happened in the Kiev region, in the Sumy region, in Chernihiv region, in Kharkiv region. Now it's happening in the Kherson region. So actually, it's not so hard to make the the straight line of the logic forward. So I guess this will continue, and the next one is going to be Zaporizhia region and so on. I hope I answered your question. Yeah.
Yes. And just to take your thought forward, what it means for the war, the larger ramification, Ambassador Sajjan, if you could come in here. Kherson is a very, very key area. It's a vital Black Sea port. It's a gateway to Crimea. It doesn't make any tactical sense for Russia to withdraw from the region. If it wasn't really losing the war, and if that was the case, why would they pump in more resources, the sort of supplies which Gautam Mukherjee also spoke about inside of Ukraine? It seems very obvious that they plan to stay on, they plan to continue the war. So why do you think Russia has made this statement? What really is the ultimate goal? What's your assessment really here, sir?
Is this the question to me, yeah?
Ambassador Sajjan, the question is for you. Ambassador Ashok Sajjan, just to clarify.
No, you're right. I think the Russians are there in it for the long haul. And they made it very clear, when they asked for this reserve mobilization, 300,000, and also there have been reports that, criminals and prisoners, etc., from in Russia, they have also been set free, and they've also been let loose on the borders to sort of, fight on behalf of Russia. So obviously, I think 2 points are clear. One, there is, a sense of desperation once there is shortage of people who are readily willing to come to the front to fight the war, and second, that there have been reverses that they have been experiencing. So it's not been a smooth, easy, path all the way. But, as our friend from Ukraine has said, I think this does appear to be that they are trying to lure. It is too strategically significant and important place for Russia to leave and just walk away. So I don't think that's going to be happening. So as the Ukrainians have said that we don't, carry on our offensive or plan our offensive on the basis of, on the basis of, newspaper reports and statements out in the open. We do that on the basis of intelligence. I think this is what they will do. They will move forward, in my view, going ahead. They will move forward. They will also replenish their own supplies. It is not as if, the Russians are going to be on the eastern coast of the river, and then they will present themselves as sitting ducks as far as the Russian ammunition, artillery, missiles, etc. are concerned. They are also receiving, equipment. They are also receiving ammunition and equipment from the Western countries. And so I think they will also wait till they are fully prepared, and then they will move in, so that if there is, an attack, a barrage coming from the eastern side, then they are also in a position to give it back to them in equal measure. I don't think they are going to be landing there in in any as a snare that they will walk into it thinking that this is a victory, because I'm sure they have fought this all through. They have registered victories. They've been able to push back the Russians in a very significant manner. But as I said earlier, these are, in my view, tactical victories. And the overall, the macro conduct of the war, the macro progress of the war, I don't know how far this will go in terms of changing it. Of course, it will be very different if they are able to, both east and west coast of the river, the Ukrainians are able to establish control and push back the Russians beyond that, and then keep on enlarging the area that is under their control. That, of course, will be extremely significant. But we'll really have to wait and watch and see how things are evolving before we are able to make that judgment and assessment.
All right, and Ingrida Kim has also joined us, and she's joined us from Russia. Ingrida, help us understand really what's the sense in Russia, because in the Western media, in Ukraine as well, this retreat or this announcement of the retreat from Kherson is being interpreted as a sign of Russian defeat, as a sign of Russian desperation, vulnerability, the fact that Ukraine is overpowering Russia. What really is the sense? Why is Russia now choosing to withdraw from an area which is strategically extremely important?
What I know from...
Yes, Ingrida, go ahead. We can hear you.
Yeah, from what I know from our media, it's not means what the Russian army was defeated. It means this general Surovikin, he decided to make this very difficult decision to save lives of Russian soldiers, to not lose them without reason, without sense. That's why he made this statement, if you read in news, and we don't call it surrender, we don't call it, we just relocated the forces on the other side of this river, Dnipro River. We will be opposite now. We will not step back, leave this region. We just want to save army forces, which is also in different military strategy, I think, is acceptable, because always in this, what is happening now between them is a fight where somebody loses more, so for example, lives, and somebody loses less. So he decided to make them mobilizing in our side. So even now we can see we're not go back to Russia. We still stay in Ukraine. So we will be watching it, how it will be going to further.
So the war is going to continue. Russia has, of course, no intention of retrieving or, of course, moving back altogether. But Ingrida, one more question to you. As far as Ukraine is concerned, Ukraine seems to be, and Ukrainians in large, or at large rather, seem to be extremely skeptical of believing this announcement by Russia. They said that it could possibly be a ploy by the side of the Russians, by the Russian sides, to surprise and overpower the Ukrainian army. They also say it's a sign of desperation of the Russian side. Really, what's the reaction coming from the Russian side? What is it the Russian media is reporting on the reaction of Ukraine?
Yeah, if I understand your question, you mean how Russian media react on Ukraine statements about Russian desperation. As we see, desperation comes from Ukrainian side too. So I mean, is nobody getting joy to be there now? And this is, I already explained previously, they are relocated, their army forces, in my opinion, they just stay in our side. They're doing some, preparing some new military strategy, because the very professional army in Russia, generals who made this decision, it was some reason to do it. So he never stated it was defeated or something like this. And from governmental news, of course, we see is We just discuss it now, how it will be going further, because it also depends from where we're now. He said it's very not possible to, for example, supply food or intendancy for the army. So he think about people in Russian army. We think about people, first of all. Soldiers were human beings, not just robots who came to fight, you know.
Okay, fair enough. And Ambassador Manju said if you could come in here, Russian side obviously clearly stating that they have no intention of leaving Ukraine. They intend to fight on. What do you think this victory, or rather this announcement, I should call it, by Russia when they say that they're going to withdraw their troops from this strategic location of Kherson means for the war, for Ukraine? End of the day, it's a shot in their arm. It's a big psychological and moral boost for the Ukrainian forces, which at the beginning of the war, as predicted by just about every second expert, as I said at the onset of this discussion, was tipped to fail. And that seems to be, changing completely as the war, of course, has dragged on for months altogether.
Absolutely. And I think what Russia is doing, as I mentioned earlier, and other speakers have also mentioned, this is not really a withdrawal. I think this is only a kind of tactical retreat, and to tell people that we are coming back. And if the Ukrainians believe them, which they are, I think, as he mentioned, our Ukrainian friend Dmitry, that, it is not, they don't believe them. It's very difficult to believe what the Russians are saying. And so if that is the case, they will not move in quickly, because I think the Russians are trying to trap the Ukrainians into moving quickly onto the east bank of the river, then and entrap them and encircle them. And the idea was that the Ukrainians would try and from what reports are saying, will try and encircle the Russian army. But I think to counter that and to and ensure that their supply chains are not affected and I think they would try and just retreat temporarily. I don't not what I feel. They will continue to stay there. It's only a partial withdrawal from one side of the riverbank to the other of the Dnipro River. And I don't think they're leaving it.
Is it, point taken, ma'am, is it a partial withdrawal? Does it mean a setback for Russia? The larger ramification of this announcement of the war, that is going to be, of course, a point of discussion for the coming days altogether as the Russia-Ukraine war continues. India, of course, even though that wasn't the point of discussion, as always, as we heard the External Affairs Minister day before yesterday, is once again batting for peace, asking both sides to come to the negotiating table. End of the day, diplomacy, dialogue, the way forward. We'll have to wait and watch how all these events unfold. As of now, I'd like to thank all the experts who joined us on this extremely riveting discussion.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.